Then we have Dr. Amir Jamal, who is Associate Professor of International Social Development and Social Policy, and also Director of Global Engagement and International Partnerships at the University of Calgary, Canada. His recently published work includes The Gatekeepers Engaging Pashtun Men for Gender Justice and Girls' Education in Pakistan, which has been translated in Urdu and will be available in Pashto language in Afghanistan in 2021. Dr. Amir Jamal, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Manu.
I now turn to Dr. Amir Jamal, who would be speaking on a very interesting subject, which talks about the inclusion of men in the process. He will be speaking on engaging men or making men allies for gender justice and prevention of gender based violence through a community oriented research and practice models. Dr. Amir Jamal, over to you, please.
Thank you so much. I'm very pleased to be here. Thank you, UN Women and Peshawar University, for organizing this important conversation in such critical times. So I'm really pleased to be here. I would like to begin with this clear and loud statement, my friends, that the ideas of peace, justice, and human rights are not anyone's ideas. These are not ours or theirs ideas. These are not Western or Eastern concepts. These are all our ideas. These are ideas of Islam. These are ideas of all faith and community groups, a phenomena and gift of our shared humanity. Similarly, domestic violence is a global issue. Globally, 1 in 3 women face some forms of sexual or physical violence. It's the issue that impacts all of us in many, many ways. In my more than 15 years of research and practice in this region, in the region of Pashtun region of Pakistan, I found that unless men, who I call the gatekeeper in my research-based book, unless men don't fully understand the significance of this issue and the impact and consequences of domestic violence, change is difficult. And this change needs to come from within. A sustainable change with deeper understanding, a change that the community values, they own it. But why? The question is the big question, but why men should care, right? So because, I argue, this is men's issue too. This is the issue of our children, issue of our next generation, because violence at home is connected with violence at the community and ultimately violence at the state level. Many of us know how violence has devastated our communities for decades in both Afghanistan and Pakistan. I am a Pashtun man. I lived my youth in many spheres of these violences. Due to domestic violence, who suffers the most? Not just women, but we men and our children and our communities also suffer. My friends, studies after studies show that majority of children grown in an environment of domestic violence goes through several emotional and mental health issues. Domestic violence damages some part of their brain, physical brain significantly. Many young people who witness domestic violence develop behavioral, emotional, social, and learning problems. They are always hyper-vigilant. They are always reactionary. They are always in defend or attack mode. They stay insecure, angry, and violent throughout their lives. Would we ever be able to bring enduring peace with this kind of unhealthy generation? That's why any peace process or peace negotiations are incomplete without addressing issues of domestic violence and especially violence against women. If we want a lasting peace for our children, for our next generation, we need to begin at home, my friends. Our very devastated people deserve to have a life without violence, a life where they have good health, they have rights, and where they feel secure and peaceful. Domestic violence is a learned behavior. These learned behaviors need to be changed with bold and authentic actions at multiple levels. Here I would suggest 4 quick action in these last 2 minutes, I guess I have. A big tent is needed, my friend. A big tent is needed, where people with divergent views can sit together for a meaningful dialogue, where we can build bridges, not the pipeline, not imposing any views, but to co-creating solutions, developing strong coalition and networks of various stakeholders, institutions, and community leaders. Number two, individual and family. I find out in my research this, that using community institutions in the particular in Pashtun area, like Hujra and Jarga and Masjid, to develop individual and institutional capacities. In my research and community work with men, I always found few men who will support gender justice and who will reject all forms of violence and injustice against women. So, my friends, creating awareness through authentic teaching of Islam that prohibits such behavior, blended with scientific knowledge that allows the negative impact of violence on communities and particularly children. Third, there are two more very quickly. Social and human service organizations. We need to bring changes in policies, infrastructure, and procedures in organizations that serves people, training healthcare workers, doctors, police, NGO workers about all these issues, and build support of preventive mechanisms that Dr. Sarah Safdar earlier beautifully spoke about. And last one, political landscape and state levels. Academia, and I'm very happy to see here academia here in both countries. Academia, researchers, universities, and social activists should come together in developing universally steeped local solutions and influencing policies and legislations at multiple levels, state level, provincial level, district level, learning from global initiatives while creating sustainable solutions and intervention strategies in local context is needed. Healthy families are the bedrock of peace, my friends. Peace process is a gift to our devastated people of this region, but it needs to start from home to communities and the policy-making institutions. This gift should be negotiated and offered in such a way in which all segments of society, including women, can appreciate it and celebrate it. Thank you.
Dr. Amir Jamal, thank you for this succinct and very to the point presentation with four very clear strategic recommendations and four clear pillars of action. And we hope to unpack some of this during the Q&A session. Dr. Amir Jamal, I want to come to you quickly on the issue of men and their role. And my very specific question is, when we look at how Pakistan dealt with militancy from 2009 onwards, the military operations in Swat Malakand, followed by military operations in Fatah, we've seen the same challenge in Afghanistan. The issue is a clash of two worldviews, a clash between Islam and the Republic states, whether it's Pakistan or it's Afghanistan. Pakistan had a history of dealing with the Taliban in Pakistan, with religious leaders. There was this whole dimension of religious men to this conflict, and then how Pakistan tackled with the post-conflict integration and implementation of a lot of pro-women legislation that Dr. Safdar has identified. And we are now seeing that process in Afghanistan as the Afghan government enters into negotiations with the Taliban. It appears that in both the countries, it's religious men who appear to be the most important segment within the male population, who need to be engaged first and foremost. And it's the religious leaders who there needs to be a coming of to terms between these two worldviews. In your research, in your exceptional experience, what have been some of the top lessons learned and best practices to influence religious leaders and to for them to accept and own the GBV agenda? You know, what were the lessons learned in Pakistan, and what could be potential recommendations for Afghanistan?
Thank you. It's a very good question. And yes, I agree that in both countries, I would say, Islam, both are like Muslim majority nations and practicing Muslims. And the religious influence is significant, of course. In my research, I did interviews with religious leaders and religious scholars at many occasions. One thing which is coming out very clearly, and that is it's all about interpretation. It's all about religious interpretation. Our religion, Islam, is full of support for gender justice, girls' education, and we can find out in many places. And I'm using those different scripture and hadith and verses from Quran, and you all know that. So, due to this geopolitical situation in last, I would say, about 40 years, right? A particular interpretation has been enforced in our region. And that particular interpretation was for a particular cause, right? But that cause and that interpretation basically damaged the social fabric of our society. And in that, women issue was really prominent. So it's about men-dominated interpretation of religious text that is not supporting gender justice, women's rights, or girls' education. So, however, I would say that in many occasions, I always found men. I always found religious leaders, religious scholars who would reject that interpretation, who would support gender justice and girls' education and many areas of women's rights. What is important, as I mentioned in my brief talk, that we need a tent, we need a forum for dialogue in which those people, those views can be heard, and we can talk to them, we can create a dialogue about it. So there is a lot which those few men, I would say, who are supporting women's rights and girls' education, they can come in. And in my next research project is all about this, what you ask about, that about engaging those men who are supporting girls' education, our women's rights and gender justice. So I'm going to be asking from those men that why they do that and what are the motivation factors for that. And I will be bringing that to the line. When you guys were talking about, I was checking a picture because I knew that this kind of question may come. And I find out that who are those, our society is, I would say, in every village I go, I found those some men who we can make allies and who can open the gate for us and we can move on. Like I was just checking, like from Afghanistan, my friends from Afghanistan would know about this man. I wanted to talk to him. I don't know if I can, if you can see this picture, this guy, this
Yeah.
beautiful guy.
Yeah. He was
Yeah. So
quite popular in social media as well, so we really appreciate his
exactly.
work.
Yeah, so these are kind of, then I spoke about from my friends in Afghanistan in the Ministry of Education. I spoke to them about, I want to find this man. I'm looking for these men. These are the men who would be basically at the front stage for gender justice and prevention of domestic violence. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. We really hope that the UN and our universities and civil society institutions who are partnering on this dialogue can help you, Dr. Amir, in identifying and connecting you with these grassroots men as partners who can open the doors for you.
So unless you have diversity of voices, unless you have both male and female voices in decision making, you're not going to have a just system that is responsive to the needs and interests of all. So that's an area actually both Afghanistan and Pakistan need to work on together.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you, Tyra.
yeah.
Yes, Amir, Dr. Jamal, you have a comment, a quick comment?
Very quickly, just a quick comment. I fully agree with what Dr. Sarah said and others. And this cooperation is really important. Before going there, there is another thing that is important. In my humble suggestion would be that cooperation within our people, there are two big extremes. One is that, as you mentioned, Amara, that is so-called people, you can say conservative, religious, whatever you want to name it, that extreme about women issues and various other issues. And the other extreme is another one, right? And they are known Western influenced NGO women. That kind of, this is the language. Let me say it clearly, right? So the point is clear. And I spoke about it, I wrote about it. And then these two extremes are not talking. They are not sitting together. And they are suspicious with each other. And I have a full article on that, a research article on it, that how NGOs are being perceived. So, which is not correct, I would say, I would argue that. So now the point is that it's really important for us in terms of any sort of cooperation, so we can develop forums and institutions and center for this kind of dialogue to find that middle way and remove those suspicion and develop this understanding for this really important cause of women's rights and gender justice. This is just one piece that is important. And the other quick point on, I don't see the name there, that was mentioned about is that university research collaboration. You know what, throughout, you all know this, I'm just repeating what you already know, that we develop, societies develop, nation develop through research. We learn from research. We grow through research. Unless solid research is not there, unless political institutions are not connected with research, with academia, we can't move forward. So it's really important that those connections, those collaborations about research are fully developed. And here I offer something to the University of Balochistan and Kabul University and Rana University, Peshawar University. I already have collaboration. Somebody mentioned about qualitative research. I'm here to support all these universities in enhancing their capacities for their scholars, students, and faculty for qualitative research in this particular area. So I would love to assist in any way I can. Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Jamal, for that very generous offer of support and partnership. You know, that's precisely one of the key objectives of holding cross-border dialogues like this, how to foster this kind of further future collaborations.